What's up, guys? Reading Funk with you, and I'm taking you through my fantasy and science fiction bookcase. Let me know what you think in the comments. Let's get started. My fantasy science fiction bookshelf is actually down here, but there are a couple of things we have to look at first. My Song of Ice and Fire books, of which I've read these two. My Dark Tower books by Stephen King, which I've completed. This is my favorite series of all time. My Earth's Children books by Jean Auel. My Harry Potter books, which I've read the first three of. I'll be reading the fourth one here, probably later this year. Big fan of this thing. Didn't think I would be, but I'm loving it. My Stormlight Archives books, of which I've read this one, the first installment. Can't wait to get into this one, Words of Radiance. And my Hunger Games trilogy. Now we can move on to my actual fantasy sci-fi bookshelf. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, friends. Here I have the Belgariad series by David Eddings. And I also have some other books by Eddings here. Some different series that he has completed. Clive Barker, Weave World. Many people have told me that this is the most imaginative book they've ever read. Can't wait to read that one. I have the first two Wheel of Times books, David Gemmell. I have the first book in the Thomas Covenant series that I'm looking forward to read. This is a very, very popular classic kind of fantasy thing. Joe Abercrombie, Last Argument of Kings, which is the third installment in the First Law trilogy. Here's a second copy of The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan. The Rune Lords, David Farland. Piers Anthony, this is a guy that I haven't read yet. Picked up one of his books, which is in the Xanth series. I've had a lot of recommendations for him, and I can't wait to try the Xanth books. I heard those are quite good. Tad Williams, The War of Flowers, a standalone book. Glenn Cook, here I have a Jack Vance novel, Showboat World. I think this is part of the books that are kind of like funny and humorous. Gardens of the Moon, Stephen Erickson. Here's Dead House Gates. These are books 1 and 2 in the Malazan Book of the Fallen series, which many people regard to be the best science fiction series of all time. And I also have a couple of books in Tad Williams' Other Land series. I think there are 4 total in this one. Moving on, I have 2 pieces of the Assassins trilogy by Robin Hobb. Lord of the Rings, 3 books in 1 book, a 1-volume edition. This is a series that's a classic that inspired so many other series that I have not yet read. Here's a second copy of Weave World. Now this is the series that I am on now by Alastair Reynolds. This is his Revelation Space series. Started as a trilogy, I believe. Maybe it started as 4 books. There's one missing in here, which is called Redemption Arc, the one that I'm reading now. Jim Butcher's Grave Peril. Man, do I love this series. I read Grave Peril earlier this year. Looking forward to the 4th installment, which is called Summer Night. It's on its way to my house now. Waiting on a paperback. A Wrinkle in Time. This is a classic YA. Some different short stories and stuff that go along with this. Hyperion by Dan Simmons. Now, many people say that this is actually the greatest sci-fi series of all time. Ursula Le Guin, A Wizard of Earthsea. I bought this paperback, ordered it online, about a month ago or so. Looking forward to giving these a try. I have no clue why Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil is in with my fantasy books. Now, I like Arthurian books, guys. Really love those things. Earlier this year, I read A Connecticut Yankee and King Arthur's Court, a classic Arthurian novel that I thought was brilliant. Man, this thing was written in the late 1800s, and I really enjoyed it. The Crystal Cave by Mary Stewart, first book in a series. The Once and Future King. This is a classic Arthurian tale. The Once and Future King was one of the first redos on this thing, I believe. I'm not really sure about the history of it, but I'm getting knowledgeable about my Arthurian history. Now, I've actually only read 2 Arthurian books in my lifetime. A Connecticut Yankee. I also read The Mists of Avalon, which was a fantastic book. So I'm getting into some more of these things. Taliesin, this is another Arthurian novel that I found at the local used paperback mart. And finally, friends, the year's best fantasy and horror short story collection. Well, there you have it, friends. That is my fantasy and science fiction book collection. As you can see, it's fairly limited. I am someone who is just now really getting into this stuff. I want to read a lot more fantasy and science fiction and cover it here on my channel in the near future. I'm loving the Revelation Space series by Alastair Reynolds that I'm into now, and I'm loving the Stormlight Archives by Brandon Sanderson. You know, I've read some fantasy in the past and enjoyed it, but I'm just now coming into the phase where I feel like I'm a fantasy sci-fi guy now, and I want to get a lot of the classics and some of the newer stuff under my belt. I will be covering a lot of fantasy and sci-fi here on my channel in the future. I have some discussions lined up. I have some book reviews I'm going to do, so feel free to subscribe to my channel if you are into that kind of thing. Thanks for dropping by, guys. I'll see you next time.